Last week, we all embarked on a road trip to the Woodlands National Park, and what a journey it has been so far. This park may seem nice and lovely at first glance, with its wonderful nature setting and friendly park rangers, our kings. However, we quickly realized that there is a ton of danger hidden within the forest, whether it be 45-foot tall walkers that are invisible, or wendigos that go off eating campers. Why anyone goes to this park is beyond me. Yet after a death within the company happens at the hand of one of these creatures, it seems our park rangers, Steve and Alex, are starting to have some second thoughts about their involvement, perhaps looking for a way out, and even better, a way to stop what's happening altogether. As always, be sure to check out the original series created by Buddy Films before jumping back into the 4+ RV to continue the tour through the park. Just to be clear as well, this is a part 2 to last week's video on Woodlands National Park, so I'll also have a link to that down in the description below just in case you missed it. But enough yapping, it's time to get this show on the road. Let's strap in and make sure we have our anti-wendigo spray. Who knows when we're going to need it.
But before I let you get too far, just wanted to say if you're new here and enjoy what you're watching, be sure to hit all those neat buttons down below as it really helps support the channel. And if you want to see more, be sure to follow us on Instagram and Letterboxd. Alright, now you can pass through.
Miners in the 1850s were eaten alive by these creatures. Tape 6. As always, we open up on our Woodlands National Park logo, and what a pleasant sight to see Ranger Steve again to introduce this tape. But apparently he is here to tell us about yet another creature that is once again native to this park. We end up cutting to Ranger Alex as he pains for gold in the water, and while this may seem out of nowhere, it's actually to introduce the lore of the miners who lived here in the 1850s, and where they used to shelter was in the naturally formed caves. But what they didn't know were the horrors that also lived inside, to which we learn about cave critters, which are said to be tall, gray, humanoid-like creatures with 6 appendages that can range anywhere between 10 to 12 feet. Not to mention they also have superhuman strength, which allows for expert level climbing. Thankfully, however, they tend to never leave the cave. Until now, it seems.
Not to leave the cave. Go, now, go, go, go!
The next thing we end up seeing is this photograph taken by John Stewart in 1957, said to be the best photo so far of these cave critters. At first I couldn't find it, until I looked up. It said that the precautions taken have made it to where they have not had a fatality due to cave critters since 1962, but given how much they lie about information, I'm not sure how much I trust it. Our next segment, however, then has Ranger Alex dropping probably the most haunting information about these creatures. They don't reproduce like normal animals. In fact, it's a virus that they are able to transmit through saliva. Better not get bit. It seems that people may get bit so often that they have created the 45-45-10 rule, in which if you have been bit, you have a 45% chance of dying of the disease, a 45% chance of transforming into a cave critter, and a 10% chance of it not doing anything. Great odds. Ranger Steve then tells us that within the first 2 weeks, a bite victim will likely experience rabies-like symptoms, and within a month, the full transformation effects begin to show. What's new, however, is that there is an urge to return to the cave at all costs as well if you have this infection, sort of explaining why they never leave the cave. Our footage then ends up cutting out, and we are brought to the Dyer Corporation, and we need gamma level clearance for this footage. We end up seeing 2 quick bits of security footage, and they don't look like they're having a fun time to say the least. We can see as it looks like a man is tied up to a chair. He ends up breaking free, but is then quickly put down. It almost looks like it was Ranger Alex who got initially thrown back by the restrained individual. I wonder just how involved these two are. Our next segment then takes us to the all too familiar park brochure, and as to be expected, we flip to the cave critter section. We read that cave critters were first discovered by miners during the gold rush. They are pale humanoid-like creatures with 6 appendages. They have long fingers and claws that enable them to climb and scale rocks effortlessly. We then see a section dedicated to the 45-45-10 rule, and it's said that not much is known about their origins, as attempts to research them have proved fatal. Ranger Alex then returns and gives us some more detail on why there is an urge to return to the cave if infected. He explains that it is due to pheromones essentially, and that once you find yourself back at the cave, the critters will then sort of protect you and ensure that the transformation goes through, which is said to take about 6 months. 69 months?
No, 6 to 9 months.
But it's now time for our rangers to inform us on how to stay safe against these creatures. Ranger Steve reassures us that since safety is their top priority, they have taken the extensive measures of putting up caution tape around the caves to keep people from going through, because that'll stop them. We are then told that if we see someone who looks to be infected walking to the cave, that we should not try to stop them, as it said the infected person will do anything and everything to get to that cave, even if it means messing you up. We should instead just contact a ranger, and on that note, the rangers close off the tape. It's great to know that we now have yet another creature to worry about here, but at least it sounds like all we have to do is avoid the caves to stay safe. Hopefully. But the fact that they can infect people and turn them into more cave critters is actually wild, and may pose way more of a problem than we initially think. Hopefully, you can't infect another person until you have fully gone through the transformation and don't like leaving the caves. The Cave Critter Disease Outbreak. Tape 7. We open on the Dyer Corporation logo, and after proving our clearance, we end up learning that on October 7th of 1975, Todd Harrison's curiosity had him venture too close to the cave where he was bitten by a cave critter. He hurriedly left, covering his wounds, avoiding any suspicion from the rangers. Todd was unaware of how serious his injury was as he felt fine on his way back to New York. The following week, he started feeling bad and went to a local Dyer medical facility. After hearing he visited the park, the symptoms he had were more than alarming. His blood was drawn and sent to the labs for testing. It was discovered that he was in stage 1 of the cave critter disease. Head Park Ranger Steve was notified immediately by the doctors. We then listen in on an audio call between James from Dyer Medical and Ranger Steve, letting Steve know that the information he is about to hear is classified info. Steve is asked to confirm a few things, like if Todd Harrison was at the park last week, to which Steve is able to figure out that Todd had purchased a day pass a week ago, to which James drops the revelation that after testing some of Todd's blood, it is now known he is already at stage 1 of the disease. This understandably flusters Steve, as how could he have gotten past the rangers? But it sounds like the simple long sleeves were able to hide his bite and avoid any suspicion. But what about the caution tape? However, Steve then asks if we know where Todd is, and James answers by saying they have his address, to which Steve then yells out to send in a team. What, to the man's house? But apparently James is already on it. So Steve asks for updates and isn't looking forward to having to tell the higher-ups about this incident. Our next segment shows us a bit of text that lets us know that on the day James called the Ranger Steve, it had been 5 days since he was confirmed infected. That's quite a while, wouldn't you say? And then we learn that on the same day as the call, a team is then sent to Todd's house. We are shown an image of his home, and read that upon arrival, the team was able to conclude that Todd was living in his basement closet. Towels were found all over the windows, blocking any light, as it said that he was becoming more sensitive. And once again, a poor cameraman is brought along to document everything. Our next segment then takes us inside the house, as our cameraman shows us around the place. We can see the pillows he used when sleeping in the closet, and the sink looks to be covered in blood. We learn that this is believed to be one of the side effects of the disease, since as seen from previous subjects, symptoms could involve bleeding that occurs from the eyes and nose. These symptoms were said to be documented from a subject in 1961. The next thing we are met with is the same footage from earlier, where Todd attempts to break out of his restraints and is then shot to death. We hang on this honestly eerie shot of Todd's lifeless body before we end up learning about the next incident. We learn that around 6 months later, 2 security guards heard strange noises coming from an abandoned hospital on the hill. One went to investigate and was attacked. The second claimed to have seen his friend get taken by a cave critter. Dyer Corps caught wind of these events and immediately sent a team. Just like our last incident, we have 10 heavily armed men, and among them, one equipped with a camera for documentation. But, this time only 3 out of the 10 men survived during the takedown, and 2 of which had been bitten and infected. So in reality, only 1 has made it out alive. Unfortunately, our cameraman was not among the survivors. Even his footage didn't really make it, except for a few still frames the team was able to salvage. The images are then shown to us, and most of them appear to be of various areas of the home. The 2 that stand out the most are the first and the last images. The first seems to have this wire coming from the ceiling out of the bedroom. Odd. The last photo then appears to have a shadow of the creature, and it looks like this was when our cameraman was perhaps knocked down and then killed, as it looks like our camera is on its side. The last thing we learn before this tape ends is that the 2 infected survivors were taken to containment to be studied. The critter's body was then removed and the cover-up process began, which is to be expected. It really seems like the whole series in general has begun to shift in a different direction, and I am all here for it. The dark secrets are slowly being revealed, and I like that we are getting more of our park rangers outside of the typical informational tape setting, allowing them to actually get in on the action and plot of the real story. I hope that as the plot continues, we see as they slowly start to distance themselves from the park's evil doings and start to work from the inside to stop all these tragedies. 45-foot tall walker eats campers. Tape 8. We open up with the park logo, and Ranger Steve comes out to tell us all about the importance of staying within the designated campsites. But then something off script seems to happen. Ranger Alex radios into Steve, and he has to break character for a second. Apparently, according to Alex, a camper has arrived at the Ranger Center covered in blood, and from the sounds of it, he is a survivor of a walker attack. Now this isn't good. Steve then quickly shuts the camera off and runs off frame. Our next segment then has us following Ranger Steve and Alex as they attempt to find the attacked campsite. As they carry along through the woods, Steve ends up hearing music in the distance. The two follow the sound and end up stumbling upon a small radio that Steve then shuts off. Steve is also a bit confused as there is no tent to be found. So much for a campsite. But that's when Alex drops the wild truth about what happened. Apparently, the poor victim went into his tent to hide, and that's when the walker just picked up the tent with him inside it and chucked it about 30 feet across the forest, landing him in a tree. Unfortunately, he falls after and breaks his leg. But what a series of events, I say. Our footage ends up glitching out a bit before Alex notices something off frame, and sure enough, when the two run to investigate, they find a severed arm holding a flashlight. Alex calls in the situation and orders in a full sweep, and the two continue their search. The next thing they end up stumbling upon appears to be what happens after somebody gets stomped on by a walker. As we can see, there isn't really a body left, just scattered remains. Steve and Alex then end up stumbling upon the tent, and sure enough, it's way up in a tree. Under the tent, however, the two end up discovering a camera, to which we end up taking a peek at what was last recorded, and sure enough, we are brought to a whole new segment, following these campers who have no clue what's to come. We see as we follow 3 campers, and right off the bat, they make the horrible decision to go off the trail to avoid all the people. The cameraman is very hesitant, but they manage to convince him to agree. Maybe if the park rangers were open and honest about what lurks past the campsites, they would have less people attempting to cross over. Plus, in their silly brains, even if something does happen, they are only a mile away and help would surely come in no time. Yeah, surely. Nighttime rolls around and our 3 have found their spot to set up the camp. They begin to set up, getting the fire lit and getting the tent ready. We then see as the 3 huddle around the fire, playing music on a very familiar radio. And as to be expected, the radio starts to static a bit, except the static completely overtakes the song, and it starts to get louder and louder.
Where'd you buy that piece of crap?
Then it becomes clear that something is nearby, something very, very large.
What was that?
Yo, hell, we don't have earthquakes in Washington.
Is that a bear?
One of the campers decides that they are going to check it out. Smart move. And in a scene that's actually really cool, we see as our poor camper gets picked up and thrown around based on the movements of only the flashlight in the woods. The other 2 run up, and as it turns out, we have the arm that our rangers found earlier. The 2 run back to the campsite. One grabs a gun, but it doesn't end up proving too helpful as he just gets yanked away, leaving just our cameraman to find his smashed remains. He grabs a flare and fires it up, and then hauls back for the tent. We know how this ends.
Says the walker picked him up while he was in the tent and lobs him across the forest. He said he landed a tree.
We can hear as the walker begins to drag the tent. Before I can only imagine, he comically throws it over his shoulders and preps for the wildest throw of his entire life with this guy inside his tent. Needless to say, he gets thrown, and we can see as he zips open the tent, and he is certainly stuck high in that tree. The footage begins to glitch out, and we are then shown the tape ending logo. This is probably my favorite tape so far. The fact that we have our rangers getting in on the serious business is amazing to see. This also had such a cool attack scene with the walker and our 3 campers. It definitely feels like now that we have established our world, all bets are off to just have a ton of fun. The Walker Attack Cover-Up of 1976. Tape 9. We open up and are immediately taken to where we... fuck. Whoops. We open up and are immediately taken to where we left Ranger Alex and Steve in the last tape. Finding the camera and watching the attack footage, we end up seeing their reaction, and we can hear that Alex is happy that they found it first, so that they can promptly get rid of it. The Rangers end up meeting up to reconvene. We even get to see 2 new Rangers. The cast appears to be growing. Alex takes charge and tells everyone that the mission is to clean up the entire campsite, get rid of any signs that anyone was ever there. You know, I said that I wanted to see Ranger Steve and Alex working against the company, not directly for it. Maybe Alex is more willing to partake than Steve is. We have noticed Steve taking it the hardest, but who's to say? We cut to various footage as our rangers go around cleaning up the remains. Alex ends up radioing in to Steve to inform him that he has found half a body in Sector 4. Yikes. The two are rightfully shocked at the gruesome scene, but I am sure they have seen their fair share of them by now. Ranger Alex calls for a body bag, and we load up the body. Then we see as everything they have collected, all the materials, body parts, any sort of evidence, gets thrown into a fire and removed from existence. We end up cutting ahead a bit and see Alex digging a hole for the body, when Ranger Steve gets radioed and told that they are needed at the medical bay, as they have just gotten a victim with bad head trauma. The two quickly tell the other Rangers to finish the job as they run over to the medical bay. We end up seeing through security footage Alex and Steve run into the building, and what ensues next is definitely not what I expected to happen. Ranger Alex quickly tries to tend to Steve's wound. At least it was just a hand shot, man. I thought you were gone. At first glance, it appears that the Ranger was attacking our victim, but then we see that said victim was strapped and just started blasting, and it was Ranger Alex who would end up dealing the final blow. That certainly won't weigh on him later. Our next segment ends up taking us to a whole new area in this world as we tune in to Washington News and can see our fellow Rangers being interviewed by a reporter, going over the supposed incident. We can even see that Steve is healing well. Steve goes on to recall the event, starting with them finding out that 3 students had gone missing, even claiming that people getting lost is actually pretty common, to show that this isn't too out of the ordinary. But they say once they arrived at the campsite, it was the most horrific sight they had ever seen. And then Steve goes on to say something quite interesting about the event.
And when we got to the campsite, I mean, the fact that another human being could do this to someone, let alone your own friends and classmates, was just unbearable to see. I mean,
something isn't correct there, Steve. So it seems that their way of covering up the incident was to frame another camper for the deaths. We then learn that there is still someone out there that they are attempting to find, but at this point, what is there to believe? We then find out that the person they have pinned the incident on was the student who got thrown into the tree. This guy survives the most harrowing incident ever and then is immediately framed for murder. Now that's some epic bad luck. Their recollection continues on as they state that once the quote-unquote killer regained consciousness after being moved to the medical facility is when all hell broke loose. Steve retells it as follows. The killer was able to get the gun off the Ranger and shoot him in the chest, killing him instantly. To which Steve then talks about his wrist getting shot, and then commemorates Alex for being there with him through it all. The two then talk again about how they are searching for a missing person, with multiple teams out 24/7 on the lookout. Then to finish off this interview, Steve again gives a heartfelt message about how this will take a toll on everybody before they all shake hands, and the footage cuts out. What we listen in on next is a phone call between Alex and Steve after the interview, in the middle of the night. And once again, these two are having second thoughts. It sounds like this is the first time Alex and Steve were put on the forefront, and the whole TV interview was an even bigger step further than they are used to, and the guilt is starting to weigh on them, fully admitting to framing the victim as the killer, Alex even focusing on the fact that he killed him in the end. But that's when Steve says that they did not expect him to grab the gun. So it sounds like our victim did truly go nuts there and start shooting. This cover-up essentially fell in their lap. I guess that makes things a little better considering I initially thought they set him up and staged the incident for the cameras. Still messed up, but by a step down. Alex brings up the mere idea of leaving, even saying that it's a bad idea, to which Steve quickly shuts it down, saying they'd be killed if they even tried. It seems like this may be the way these two have to live their lives until they die, until Steve says that he may have something to change that, and tells Alex to meet him in person to avoid any peeping ears. Our footage then glitches out, and we are shown various security footage of outside the park, a place we have yet to see until the interview. But then our security footage takes a turn, and our whole series just got a whole lot more cinematic. Alex walks down the sidewalk until he stops at a bench accompanied by none other than Ranger Steve. The two sit next to each other, and Steve begins to drop a truth bomb on Alex. Apparently on the day Nancy came into the station, the wife of John who was mauled by a Wendigo, she showed Steve a briefcase full of his stuff inside some secret room that she and even the Rangers had never seen before. Steve admits to keeping it a secret to keep Alex safe, but after a year of trying to decipher the codes and getting nowhere, he thinks he may be overthinking. Steve hands Alex a folder that contains a few photos of what looks to be cave drawings with a code attached at the top. Alex is able to deduce that the cave painting is showing people worshipping this tree, and believes it could be some sort of resurrection ritual given what appears to be someone crawling out from the ground. Steve agrees with this assumption, and when we flip to the next image, it's described as people interacting with a cave critter, and the fact that it isn't behaving with hostility is raising some eyebrows. Steve believes that they could be trading things with the creature, but the last photo is the most concerning, as we can see what looks to be two people offering something to a walker, which poses many questions. How did they see it? It's said that they can only be seen during the day, but the only time Steve and Alex can recall ever seeing one during the day, it burned up almost instantly and died. So at some point they were able to traverse during the day, and it also isn't attacking these people, resulting in them realizing that everything they knew about these creatures has been a lie, and they believe that they could have been building something given all the objects being handed and traded with the creatures. Steve then drops his theory that he believes that this is all about that resurrection tree, as it could be some key to eternal or at least extending your life. And if the park knows about this, then it would make sense they would go through all these cover-ups and awful shenanigans in an attempt to have it for themselves. Corporations, I tell ya. Steve even reveals that this park was under the risk of being destroyed due to the rise in infrastructure in the early 1900s. But considering this immortal life-giving tree existed there, people made sure that didn't happen. But as of this moment, it sounds like the plan is to keep quiet, keep researching, and attempt to break the code. Our scene cuts out and we are then shown the 3 images through a projector, and a very quick QR code flash. Scanning the code takes you to an unlisted video titled Woods Family, and all we are met with is this family record. We can see the list of names alongside their dates of birth and death, until we get to Abraham Woods, born in 1815, and then there is no recorded date of death. Odd. No, I'm no gambler, but I'm willing to bet that means Abraham Woods got his hands on a certain tree, and now is somewhere out there living among us, likely in the park. The text at the very end of this tape saying Season 2 now in production leads me to believe that this was the season finale. And what a way to end the season. This really did a great job at fleshing out this fun and interesting world, and then diving headfirst into the chaos of it. But we still have one final tape left. Is this the true end of Season 1, or the start of Season 2? No need to think too hard about that, I suppose. The most powerful corporation in the world, the Dyer Corporation. Tape 10. We are brought to the Dyer Corporation logo, and can see that we now require Epsilon level clearance for this footage. I got this, guys, don't worry. As it turns out, we have been hired by the Dyer Corporation. Oh boy, what do I win?
Nothing!
We immediately learned just how influential this company is, as it said that we probably drove here in a Dyer car, or had an appointment at a Dyer medical facility, or even used a tech product from Dyer Technologies. Our footage then ends up cutting out and we are brought into the POV of someone watching TV and flipping through the channels. We see an ad for a Dyer portable radio, which is probably the one the students who were demolished used. The next ad we see is for Woodlands National Park. How familiar. The last ad we see is then just for the Dyer Corporation, where we learn that it was founded by Thomas Dyer. And I can't be the only one who hears that he was born in 1484.
The visionary Thomas Dyer I, born in 1484.
It's easy to miss, but there is a quick flash of what looks to be garbled text, which I'm sure is some kind of code. And if we look back at the last tape, it's the same code format that was used on the photo. Well, let's get to it. If I'm being honest, at first I had no clue if I was going to be able to decipher the code, but that's when I opened up the description and saw that they had their own website. And wouldn't you know, there's a page for the Woodlands National Park. We can see immediately on the first brochure page more of that code. Then when you scroll down, you can see our fellow rangers. What's up, guys? Clicking on Alex's photo gives you a brief bio, but clicking on Steve's photo brings us this QR code. Giving it a scan brings us to a video titled John Stewart's Key Code. With this in hand, we can start deciphering some codes. Translating the park brochure founder code gives us the name Abraham Woods. Now would you look at that? The code on the photo in the last tape translates to Don't Trust Abraham. Uh-oh. And then finally, the code during the Dyer Core ad translates to There were once 3, but only 2 remain. That was a lot to uncover all at once, but let's save the rest of the theorizing until after we wrap up this last tape. Our next segment has us back in a cinematic view, and it appears we are back in the park, when out of the blue we get a sudden Evil Dead reference. We are then taken back to that onboard instructional video where we are being hired, and it looks like we are going through the company's history. And it sounds like in this universe, the Dyer Corporation is who discovered penicillin. Either that, or they're just lying about it. But either way, it said that pharmaceuticals are a core pillar of the Dyer Corporation. We then learn that during the American Civil War, Dyer Corp got into the weapons business with the development of their own bolt-action rifle. We then learn in 1916 they unveiled the F-30 fighter jet, and we get told a little fun story about how it was showed off to President Wilson. However, our footage ends up glitching out, and we briefly get to see a video of what I can only guess is the jet flying over the president's head as he holds his arms out. It's then said that the force of the demonstration knocked the president to the ground, and he was so impressed he signed an order of 100 jets that day. The victories don't end there either. In World War II, it's said the Dyer fighter jets are what held off Japan after Pearl Harbor. What's crazy is that it's then said that Dyer Corp created the atomic bomb. Did this corporation do literally everything in this world, or are they taking the credit for every achievement someone else did? Considering that we then learn that we dropped the atomic bomb in 1944 in Berlin, ending the war with Europe? Wait a minute, this isn't adding up. It seems like history is a little different here. Fun fact, that was actually the initial plan in real life, but the atomic bomb wasn't finished in time, hence it then being used on Japan. So it's interesting how this world seems to be going in just a slightly different direction, where Dyer Corp exists and was able to put out the atomic bomb faster than Cillian Murphy. Our footage then cuts out and we are brought to the security footage, and from the sound of it, we are in Germany. And who appears to be a soldier tries to shoot at this guy, but the gunshots don't do anything as he proceeds to just walk towards them, and it sounds like he proceeds to rip them apart. Could this be someone who is resurrected by the tree? Maybe the process doesn't work as well as we think. Our next scene puts us in a detective's office, it seems, as we listen in on an autopsy report performed by Dr. Eleanor Hayes. She mentions how she has been a medical examiner for 18 years and has seen her fair share of horror, but this is a whole new deal. But that's when the police chief barges into her office and tells her to stop whatever it is she's doing, and that this whole situation is now being handled by the feds. This confuses our character, but our chief isn't questioning it, even though he says he doesn't like the situation. Our character tries to claim that Dyer Corp is behind this, but the chief doesn't even want to hear about it, as he doesn't want him or his family in danger. Clearly he knows something is up. Something to note as well is that this scene is actually a recut since the original upload got taken down. The creators thankfully provided what occurred during that scene. Essentially, it sounds like our doctor was performing the autopsy on the man we saw attacked in the security footage, and it revealed he was truly ripped to shreds, hand imprints and all. Our scene then transitions and we are back to learning more about this corporation's history, learning more about some medicine achievements like advancements in cancer treatments to the learning more about some medicine achievements like advancements in cancer treatments to the automotive industry we briefly heard about earlier. However, our next segment has us listening in on real Americans giving their thoughts on this huge corporation. We get to hear from Mabel from Ohio, who loves driving her Dyer vehicle, and it sure sounds like she loves it.
Handles great, got excellent gas mileage, and most of all, it's fast.
Who would have thought? The last thing we are then met with this tape is our narrator welcoming us to the Dyer team, closing off the century. If I wasn't excited for Season 2 before, I certainly am now. But first, we need to try and figure out what is going on here. If I had to guess, Abraham Woods discovered the existence of this immortal tree back in the 1800s, learned how to gain its eternal life, and then founded the park to keep it safe. However, there is a deep connection between Dyer Corp and the Woodlands National Park. If I had to guess, I think it's possible Abraham Woods is just Thomas Dyer. Perhaps as a way to hide his immortality, he switched identities at a certain point, no longer being the old founder of the park, but the founder of a revolutionary tech industry that also protects the park with its private military force. But why shouldn't we trust Abraham like the code warns us about? While our other code that talks about how there was once 3 and now 2 could be referring to our rangers. The only rangers we have gotten the names of are Alex, Steve, and John, and we all know what happened to John, which would explain the 3 going down to 2. Are these rangers some sort of sacrifice for the resurrection? That's another thing to mention as well. This tree seems to have the ability to grant eternal life and bring people back from the dead. We do get a brief moment where someone's hand bursts from the ground, which could only mean a few things here. For a moment, I thought that this could be John. He did die on park soil, so it would make sense for him to be brought back. But did someone try and bring him back? That question is what is leading me to believe that this may be the person Alex and Steve had buried in the previous tape, the one they found split in half. They put him in a body bag and then buried them, so perhaps they accidentally performed the ritual when they buried the body and burned the other corpses. Who knows? It's not like they come out all clean and nice. We saw how the other one ripped that guy to shreds. But like I always say, this could just be crazy talk. At the end of the day, however, this was a blast to go through to say the least. This took us through analog horror, found footage horror, to just cinematic styled shots. A complete ride through and through, and it isn't even over. I really like how there's a hidden story in the background as these analog horrors usually do, but it wasn't too hard to crack. And this truly just feels like everyone is having fun and is fully passionate about this project. You can just feel the good time radiating off the series. If you haven't already, I highly recommend you check out Woodlands National Park, as it is truly worth your time. And be on the lookout for Season 2, as I am sure there are some big things coming our way. But that'll probably be about it for this video. If you made it all the way to the end, I thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to keep leaving me recommendations down below, whether it be in the YouTube comments or the community Discord, where we perform resurrection rituals on the daily. But if you'll excuse me, I think I just heard something outside the tent, and think the best course of action would be to check it out.